Give me your top 2 TV shows all time.
Top 2 TV shows. Oh my goodness. Trying to think. I don't know. I loved House of Cards. I guess before everything went down with Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed that show. But now I'm watching like a little bit more, going back to like reality TV shows a little bit.
Yeah. Have you seen
Yeah,
Tiger
I'm
King
watching.
yet?
Oh my God, yeah. I saw that I saw that last week. Oh my God, I was just like mesmerized.
Well, we're live now. It's official. I'll spare everyone watching our recap of Tiger King. We'll do that after this recording. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm here with my good friend Miguel Jacob, friend of Henry's. He's also an ambassador for Fujifilm, for Pro Photo. He's also an educator, as well as fashion photographer, commercial photographer, portrait photographer. You know, it's not like he has much to do, right? Thank you so much for joining us. First and foremost, how are you doing?
Doing well, doing great. These are unprecedented times. We have a global pandemic. That is the big elephant in the room, of course. And but sort of navigating through the murky waters of this time period, going through different emotions, as a photographer, as an educator, and all, but also as a partner to my wife and as a father to my son Rio. You're also thinking about them, and So I've been trying my utmost to go with the feelings that I've been feeling in that moment. So if I feel a sense of like fear or anxiety, I go with it and I acknowledge it. And then in other days, I feel like really happy, content, and trying to practice gratitude every single morning and every day with my family. Then you feel happier, and you're just connecting with more people. I mean, I haven't talked to you, unfortunately, in a couple of months. So such a pleasure being here with you and everyone at Henry as well.
Definitely,
say hello to everybody.
It's one of these things where times like this often find us to kind of remind us in a way what's really important, and that human connection and reconnecting with people we may not have spoken to in months, if not years, right? I have to ask, with respect to your craft, with your work, your photography, as well as, you're a professor at Sheridan, you teach photography as well. What were some of the first steps in sort of adapting and pivoting with those fields? Like, what were the early things that you had to do to make those things either move on or adapt?
Well, I had a job, a commercial job that I shot in Vancouver, actually only a couple of weeks ago. So I just came back from a job, and then I just heard in the news what was happening out of China, and then how it was kind of spreading, and then it was declared a pandemic. So I was happy that I did that commercial job before, because God knows what would happen if it was, taking place now. It would have definitely been canceled many weeks in advance. So that was really good to get that project done. Now I have a few days on hold in the coming months, more into the late summer, early fall for the same client. So going August and October. So for that particular job, I'm thinking, they may push it a month, but we've yet to see. In terms of I was actually working on a personal project that I've been working on, a personal portrait series that I started 10 years ago. I had some dates penciled in April, May, and June. So that I had to already I had it booked at the studio, and I already had to push that aside. And then in terms of my instruction at Sheridan, we were, along with I think everybody in all different fields, sort of thrust into some type of e-learning. So what we've done with our students is we've let them have a little bit of time to kind of adapt, and we started adapting the assignments. So one of our last assignments they have to do a portrait series. Now we know that they're going to be limited because of the social distancing measures taken worldwide and here in Ontario. So we have to, we had a lot of meetings with other faculty members trying to determine what's doable, because for Sheridan we only have 2 weeks left. So next week is week 13, and the following week is week 14. So they were basically doing their fourth assignment. I actually modeled for one of my students who asked me to do this advertising watch shot, and he's an avid watch collector. And
Yeah.
normally I stay away from that for the 6 years that no one's ever asked me. But he asked me with such conviction and such desire to photograph me. I don't know. I just said yes. I modeled for him
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, so he was able to finish his assignment. So we've just been having to again, like yourself as well, as we talked earlier. There's a time period where we really have to just go with the flow and adapt and tap into like our the creative side of our minds, of our brain, and really collaborate and just make things happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been a work in progress, and but it's also an exciting time because you realize that you have more tools at your disposal than you really think that you do. So
Yeah,
I think it's been exciting.
I want to talk about the opportunity, but first, one of the things I have to ask you is that you're a figure of authority in multiple areas, right? For your clients that you work with, for your students, and for your kid, right? So, how do you sort of maintain your composure for these people, for these relationships, even though that this is totally new, this pandemic thing? I'd like to think we've never gone through something of this nature ever before, right? It's really unprecedented. So how do you sort of balance your emotions and also maintain a level of, I guess you could say, trust with these relationships externally outside of you?
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Gajan, by saying like we're navigating through uncharted waters. And
Right.
I think that you have to give yourself the time to focus on what's important. So if you're dealing with a client and they need their files and they're anxious, you have to, this is a time to not just think of yourself, but be more giving. So I've seen a
Right.
lot of brands out there that have been giving, and you guys have been fantastic at this as well, with you giving a lot of free content and reaching out to your customers, as opposed to saying, bombarding them with initiatives of sales and getting them
Right.
into the stores or online shopping. It's almost like a time people are pausing a little bit, and I think that it's important to provide people with tools that they can use. And we didn't get a chance to talk at the beginning, but earlier we were discussing the tools of the trade, and that nowadays I think everyone has to equip themselves in their home to do some type of e-learning or teleconferencing, and how to set up your lighting so that you look good.
Yeah.
All these kind of things, because I look at when you called me earlier, I was looking at your setup and I was trying to determine what lights you had, and just to accentuate it. And for some of the viewers out there, and I know one of my main interests is lighting, but I'll just shut off my light here, and you can see that without. And I actually have access to a small window in our home office.
Right.
So just the color is a little bit off, and then when I put and I'm using the Profoto B10 with
show them,
with a
show
41-inch umbrella. So I've got that set up, and then I have a master clamp with a Manfrotto articulating arm, and then I have it rigged up here to I have it set up with a couple of reflectors that I have here, just to kind of, I don't know, just give a nice catch light, and it makes me look more inviting.
But
So I wanted to make it edgier. Maybe I take it off.
We were chatting about it earlier, but you said it perfectly, right? Like in this day and age, with teleconferencing and people working from home, all of a sudden everyone is a creator, right? They all are presenting themselves and communicating this way. And you also said it. I mean, it doesn't have to be the Profoto B10. We do carry that as well, but the idea of thinking about lighting, right? Getting the right accessories, and the accessories don't have to be expensive. We have the good, better, best options for that. But just considering that, where if I'm looking at you right now, and for the people that are looking at you, it looks fantastic, right? It looks professional, it looks clean, and it really carries a sense of a better message than, well, if you had no lighting and you had a little webcam and you're looking down at it. It's totally different, and I think that presentation matters.
Yeah, and it's well, thank you about the compliment. I set this up and with the tools that I had. So obviously I do have some gear that I've been investing in gear for quite a few number of years. But I started putting the tools together, just buying this articulating arm and buying this clamp and buying this Matthew stand and the Profoto B10, and just having umbrellas and just thinking, well, what message do I want to send? And just knowing, with this type of, the white medium umbrella, first of all, it'll fit in this space because I don't have a gigantic home office, and it would just give me like a soft, natural look, but it'd be heightened. It wouldn't look so amateur had I not accentuated the natural lighting of the room with the knowledge that I have with light shaping. So I think that was an important point. But I think, going forward, maybe we should put something together where we build the lighting and we show our viewers how to set that up with. There's various ways to do it,
So you heard it here, folks. We're gonna have to do a follow-up to this, and we're just gonna talk about setting up the perfect lighting for your next web conference. There you go. It's done. let me talk about this. You touched on it a little bit earlier, but this idea of looking at the silver lining, the opportunity in all of this. While all of this is happening, one of the things I respect about you is sort of having this pragmatic and often optimistic look at things ahead. That there is some good to be found from this, maybe a lot of good to be had from this. So when you look at the COVID-19 situation, with respect to yourself and your professional work, where is the opportunity for you? What do you see the potential in?
Well, first and foremost, I have to say, I'm very grateful right now because I have my health. And that I think is very important for everyone to just take a step back and say, if we live here in an amazing country and hope, I know a lot of people don't have the resources and they're struggling financially to make ends meet. And there were certain things that we had to put into place, right? Because certain things and opportunities you have to sort of forecast and look forward and set something in place that where you feel comfortable. When you have that stress, you're not as creative. You can't be. Right. But in terms of coming back to the question that you asked initially about being creative, is that this is an opportunity to. I believe there are two things that you can do. You can pause because it's forcing you to do that. So if you have a kid or kids like I do, and you're homebound with your wife, and we both have different careers, you have to support one another, like 100%. You have to be there for one another. You have to do some type of homeschooling, and that's something that you have to do. And then secondly, there's an opportunity to press the reset button. So anything in your life that you've wanted to do, or that you've set aside, any projects or something that you're like, I needed to do this, I wish I was at home to do, you know what? You're given that opportunity right now. Yeah. And I think it's important for us to recognize that and to say, I need to pause, and then in certain aspects of my life, I need to reset, and this is the time to do it now. Yeah. There's so many wonderful things. Like, I'm so glad you said that. But there's just, thinking about physical fitness, a lot of gyms closing down. All of a sudden, they're putting, a selfie stick with a tripod, and then they, from home, they're doing, via Zoom, they're doing these amazing classes, and you're interacting and engaging with these spaces that you've never engaged with before. And it's and like you said earlier, everyone's becoming a creator because you have to think outside the box and basically jump in head first into this our newfound reality, which is that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for doing remote connections or remote interactions with in our workplace. So I think that is very, very important.
Of course. And really, like you said, a lot of us still are lucky to have our health, that we can still make ends meet. And, as creators, we can still move forward. And, especially that crowd, what's the excuse now? And we were saying that if I had more time, I would do my podcast, or I would do my YouTube channel, or I would write my blog, or whatever it may be. Now is that time, right? Now is that time to really strike while the iron's hot, take advantage of some of this reclaimed time that was such a scarcity before, and get to work and start to move the needle in that way. I'm glad you brought that up. I want to talk to you about some of the stuff you talk about in your classes as well with respect to fashion photography, because you're a bit of an expert in that, to say the least. For those people that are looking to get into that industry, On top of the fact that it's already extremely competitive, that the rates weren't, historically what they used to be, that a lot of people are fighting for these tear sheets that are a little bit more scarce now. And you're also, everyone's a photographer all of a sudden. With Instagram and the democratization of creative technology, it's so much more competition. And now you throw in COVID-19 and now brands and advertising, they got to rethink how they're allocating dollars. And, there's jobs that are going to be gone because of this. In the midst of all that, I'm trying not to be a Debbie Downer here, but what is your advice to those people that are still, they want to get into fashion photography, they want to get their foot in the door, they want to do commercial work, they want to make that their livelihood? What are some of the key things that you would impart on them?
I think, thanks for the very easy question, the tough question. So there's two main things. I think when you're a creator and a creative, you also have to harness and develop your creative voice. So I think that's fundamental in anything that you do. So it's very easy nowadays when you're scrolling through Instagram and Facebook and going through people's websites and agencies to be very intimidated by what other people do. But the thing is, we all have a distinct point of view. And when it comes to fashion, and I would argue any type of art, there's always an aesthetic quality to it, and there's an appreciation for beauty. If you're a furniture maker, there's an appreciation for. If you're a minimalist designer, you like that sort of spareness and fine lines. So there's a beauty in that. If you like a little bit more rugged and natural looking materials, then you're attracted to that.
Right.
So it's determining what motivates you. Who are you inspired by? So that's one thing, is like fundamental, is developing your creative voice. And then secondly, and what I tell a lot of my students, I would say in any field, but specifically in what we do, is that we are hired to make things easy for our clients. Mm-hmm. So we're hired to translate a message and to make the experience of creating a campaign, whether it's stills or images or both, to make that experience a wonderful experience, and to make that transition easy. So our clients, whether we're shooting family portraits or we're doing weddings or doing a high-end fashion campaign, they all want the same thing. They want imagery or content that expresses a point of view. So for example, if they want it to be lighthearted and a lot of energy, you have to bring that lightheartedness and energy into the set or into the meetings, and you have to make it seem like they're coming up with the ideas and that you're putting forth something that was very easy to achieve on set. Right. And I think that when you do that, then people realize, wow, doing these concepts doesn't have to be, heartbreaking and really, really tough and people are on edge all day. It can actually be a wonderful experience to be on set. I always told my students and I've been doing this for many years because, and this I want to tell the viewers as well, in fashion, when you look at fashion, when they put out, different trends, when it comes to clothing, maybe this shirt is in this season, but it's out next season. And I'm going to say this truthfully, fashion industry is like that for photography as well. You're in one season and you have to, if you don't keep reinventing yourself and creating those solid relationships, you could be getting a lot of work one season, the next season, not at all. Wow. So I think it's really, really important to be on set, whether it's a creative, whether it's a paid gig, whether it's a big commercial shoot, coming in with a lot of gratitude. And I used to practice that for a couple of years. It just started happening to me. And I said to students, I told students, when being on set is, you have to be grateful for that. It's a privilege to be on set. And I actually was saying it a couple of weeks ago because they were doing a project, and then as soon as the COVID-19 epidemic took hold, pandemic I should say, it became more and more apparent that wow, I can't be on set even if I wanted to right now. Yeah. So we have to practice gratitude. That is fundamental.
I'm so glad you said that. I was traveling a little over a month ago, and I was in India for 3 weeks, and the schedule was just insane. We were shooting, we were traveling, a lot of sleepless nights, but I just had this super grateful attitude throughout, and people would ask, how do you do it? It's because you never know when this is gone from you. You know, we are so fortunate that we get to practice what we love for a living. You know, how lucky are we that we get to do what we love day in and day out? How could you not wake up and be grateful, even when you're tired, even when you're sore and you're, 20 pounds of gear in your backpack? Be grateful for that. You know, I'd rather be sick, tired, and sore from that than something else that I don't enjoy. So I'm glad you brought that up. You mentioned this this one point about developing your eye, right? How did you look to develop your eye when you were coming up and when you were completing projects? How did you look to do that for yourself?
Well, definitely one of the things that a lot of artists do in any field is look at other people's work. And I think that as I've been in this industry coming up on 15 years, I've sort of steered away so much by looking at other people's work and being inspired that way, as more so trying to develop my own voice and trying to express things that I find are relevant in the world, or wanting to see an image that hasn't been created before. So I think that's really important. But one of the things, so when I was growing up, I moved from Peru to Canada when I was 8 years old. And my older brother, who's a very renowned artist named Louis Jacob, he used to work at W.H. Smith at the Eden Center. Now that's going to date me a lot, because W.H. Smith was a bookstore way before Indigo and Chapters and all those stores. It was a British store, and we had stores throughout Canada. And they were the only store at the time in the 1980s where you can get access to international magazines. And my brother Louis used to sell two magazines that really inspired me: ID magazine by Terry Jones, and The Face. And ID is still around, but The Face, I think it made a resurgence. But I think it sort of they stopped producing The Face magazine, a very influential magazine, about 15 years ago.
Right.
So at the end of the month, if they didn't sell the magazine, they would tear out the page and they would just store it in the garbage. So my brother would ask if he could keep them, and they said, yeah, if you're going to take it, no problem. So some of those early issues my brother and I still have. And the photographer who used to shoot those editorials that really impacted me was Nick Knight. And Nick Knight started shooting it he finished college in 1979 and started shooting in 1980. So this was still part of his early sort of upbringing. And so I have different sections in my bookshelf. That section there, from here to over here, is devoted to Nick Knight. These are all editorials throughout the 1980s and 90s, including ID, and I have the Fashion Bible in 1985, and I have a couple of books here. Sorry, it's behind the light, but I have three of his books there. Four of his books, including his first book called Skinhead, which is it was a book that he did when he came out of college, actually. I'll pull it up here.
You can't see me, but the audience sees me, and they just see my jaw drop right now. I'm practically drooling here. Wow.
So that's that's a book, the first book that Nick Knight put out. So what he did was he was really interested in counterculture, and he shaved his head, and he wasn't a skinhead, but he infiltrated the group, and then became a skinhead for that time. And he used his camera in order to. I always think the camera's like a passport. The camera becomes a passport to infiltrate a group or meet people. So when it comes to portrait, when we sit down with my students or I do any lectures, and people are asking, well, who should I conceptually reach out to, and what type of people? I make it very simple. I say, who do you want to spend a couple of hours with or an afternoon with?
Right. Wow. Amazing. Thank you for that.
So Gajan, imagine that you're interested in, for instance, like race car driving. That is, a side passion. Maybe you can do a series on race car drivers, and then start building on that world or that subculture. For example, somebody else could be interested in rodeos or something like that. And then the rodeo can become. So you take some pictures at the rodeo, And then based on that, you can take pictures of the participants, and then it could become, oh, how about Western music, Western fashion, and it could be an all-encompassing series. So you're entering that world from your desire to enter that world because you're interested in something in that subsection.
I love how you painted that picture. I love how you painted that picture. It's that context that you provide that we so often don't hear as creative. So thank you for that. We have about 5 minutes left. I want to end it off on this. Again, we're going to go on Instagram Live where you guys can ask questions as well. In the last 5 minutes, if you can impart some level of wisdom or well wishes, because one of the things, anytime I talk to you, I just feel better afterwards. Okay, I won't lie, I just feel happier. So for the creatives out there that might be going through a little bit of a tough time, for the creators out there that might be unsure of what their next action is going to be, what would you say to them right now?
I would say don't give up. Don't give up. Remember why you started doing what you're doing. Now, in not giving up, it doesn't mean put all your resources and really get behind or get in the red by spending many months not working. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying remember the reason why you started what you're doing now. So make it happen. So for instance, and one piece of advice is linked a little bit to these times is, when it comes to finding your passion, the Japanese talk about this idea of ikigai, finding your ikigai. So there's a couple of circles that are interconnected, 3 circles. One of them is about that you're good at doing, something else that you can translate into getting paid for, something that the world needs. All these things are related to it's something that you're passionate about. So those 4 things intersect and form what's ikigai, which is your passion. Now, you can also supplement your income doing things that you're really good at as well. And there's no shame in that. So for instance, I do teaching because before I got into photography, I used to be an elementary school teacher.
Oh, no way. I didn't know that about you.
Really, I was a contract teacher for a couple of years. I did while I was doing my master's at U of T in education. So that's my background, but I really enjoy. So I love interacting with young people and seeing their perspective because kids, they come up with answers. I'll leave you with one little story that has to do with this time because we have to be very resourceful at this time. But I was teaching French immersion. It was a grade 2-3 split many years ago before I got into photography.
Right.
And we were putting on plays, and I was teaching in French. I was teaching the kids in French, and we were putting together a play, and we had this book on like all these different plays, and we had done one before. We did Rumpelstiltskin in French in front of like all the parents, and we videotaped it and I gave the DVDs out. And then in the next semester, we had to come up with another play. So I told them, listen, we're going to do a vote. And they all came up with this play about these animals, and it was about transportation. It was about using tools to travel. Right. And I remember distinctly that I went to the daycare and I asked, do you have any cars or planes? And they were like, no, we don't have any. I'm really sorry. So I told the kids, I remember this, and I'll never forget this. I said to them, I'm really sorry, but we don't have the tools visually to do the play. And one of the kids raised their hand and they said, Mr. Jacob, why don't we make them? And I was like, wow, I never thought about that. And so we put them into groups, and I'm like, who can make the car? Who can make the plane? These are grade 2-3 students. We're talking 7 and 8-year-olds. We set up a plan, and I said, listen, we'll spend this period, and they set up a plan. They have to write up a plan by the end of that period. And we sat back down on the carpet, and they had to sell it. And they sold it to me because of their ingenuity because we didn't have the resources. And they made everything. So the parents gave them cardboard. We decorated. They painted it. They put it together. They learned their lines. They acted, and it was like it just totally blew my mind. Wow! And that we're almost those kids in grade 2 and 3 in my story. Yeah. We have to pool our resources together, stay connected as much as possible with yourself, with Henry's, with myself. Hopefully you can share my contact, my Instagram, my
course,
email
of course.
after my website. But this is the time to sort of pool resources and be as creative and as positive as possible.
Amazing, amazing. So listen, our chat here is done. We're gonna go over to Instagram, and you guys can ask questions as well. But before we go, I have your social up, Miguel_Jacob_ is where you can find them on Instagram. Where else can people get in touch with you and find your work?
MiguelJacob.com.
Amazing.
And I apologize because I have not updated my website in a little while. And again, like you said earlier in the discussion, no excuses anymore, right, Gadget?
Exactly. All these photographers that said, oh, I wish I could update my site. Now you need to go and update your site. Thank you so much, Miguel. It's always a blast talking to you. I'm going to talk to you again in a few minutes. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you again soon.